Hi friends, what's up? It's Jaime here. Welcome back to another Fangirl Fridays video. Continuing with my Pride themed videos for the month, I thought that it would be fun to highlight some of my favorite queer authored books and thus favorite queer representation in books. In addition to talking about some of my favorite queer authored books, I'm also finally going to talk about Sapph-Lit, the queer book club that I am a part of, which is really where I was introduced to pretty much all the books that I'm going to mention in today's video. Also, please excuse the lighting for today's video. It's really gloomy outside today. But today was really the only day I could film this video, so, you know, this is the lighting we're gonna get, so sorry about that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, never mind, I caved and I turned on the lamp, even though I hate turning on the lamp for these videos because it always makes the lighting super yellow, but I also didn't want the video to be dark, so... the lighting has honestly just not been cooperating with me recently, just because it's been very gloomy recently, but... you know, it's whatever, honestly. So I've mentioned Sapph-Lit a couple of times in several of my book videos, but I've never really expanded on what it is exactly. Like, it's a book club, yes, but it's also so much more than that, so I always knew that I wanted to talk about it more in one of my videos. And what better video to talk about Sapph-Lit than a video dedicated to talking about queer books? So Sapph-Lit is a sapphic book club created by book talker Nina Haynes on May 26th in 2021. Sapph-Lit is hosted on the Geneva app, which functions similarly to Discord, but instead of servers, you have rooms. And so for Sapph-Lit, those rooms consist of the main book room where we discuss the monthly book picks, but there's also a queer media room as well as an arts and crafts room. There are also regional rooms, like personally I'm a part of the New York City room because that's the regional area that's closest to me, even though I don't actually live in the city. Being part of a regional room is cool because that's where you can see that if there are people in the club that are in your area, if they're planning any IRL events that you can go to. Like just recently, I attended a book swap event in Brooklyn and it was really fun. This is my first IRL Sapph-Lit event and I got to talk to some of my fellow Sapph-Lities and it was super cool. I really enjoyed myself a lot. I was super nervous about attending because I have social anxiety. I know it doesn't always seem like that because all these videos I make are of me, you know, just like talking for like forever, just like non-stop. But in real life, I'm actually very introverted and shy and it's really hard for me to kind of like come out of my shell and like talk to new people. So there was like a million times where I was like going back and forth, like being like, should I go, should I not go? And even just like up until like the event itself, I was like, do I go in? Do I not go in? I was like, but I'm so glad that I went. I'm really proud of myself for going because it was really so much fun. Everyone was super nice and it was just really chill vibes and it was just so good. I loved it. Like I mentioned before, the main room on the Sapph-Lit Geneva is like the book club room, but there are also other like book oriented rooms that you can like go in and like talk to people in. Like there's a currently reading room, there's also like a book recommendations room. I think there's also like a YA readers room if you specifically really enjoy YA, like that genre. And even if you aren't able to always keep up with like the book part of Sapph-Lit, there are so many other rooms. Like there's a room to talk about queer media or just miscellaneous gay things. There's also like a life room where you can just talk about general life things. So you don't always have to keep up with the monthly books to be a part of the Sapph-Lit community. And Sapph-Lit is a community of over 7,000 members, and I can assure you that all 7,000 something members aren't like always attending every like individual book discussion that we have, including myself. I know that I have missed a bunch of the meetings. So don't feel bad if you aren't always like actively partaking in like the book part of Sapph-Lit. Sapph-Lit is a really wonderful community for queer women and trans and non-binary folks in general, but if you want to engage with the book club aspect of Sapph-Lit, we read one book every month, which you can always find in the pinned messages of the monthly book picks room in the Sapph-Lit Geneva, or on the Sapph-Lit Instagram at Sapph-Lit. We actually used to read 2 books a month, one fiction and one nonfiction book, but we have collectively as a community decided to downsize to just 1 book a month, and we're gonna alternate between fiction and nonfiction just because it was getting to be a little bit much. If you want to know the books that we've read for Sapph-Lit or the books that we are going to read, that we're currently reading, again, you can find them on the Sapph-Lit Instagram, or you can just join Sapph-Lit yourself. I've been a part of Sapph-Lit since about late February, early March-ish, somewhere around then, and I literally can't say enough good things about this community. I was talking about this with my boyfriend Adam the other day because as a queer woman in a straight relationship, there are times where I feel it's hard for me to feel in touch with my queerness, as silly as that might sound. But being a part of this wonderful queer community that is Sapph-Lit, it's really helped me feel like more at home and attuned with my queerness, and I just think that's really neat. Now, if I've piqued your interest and you would like to join Sapph-Lit yourself, go to the Sapph-Lit Instagram and click the link in the bio. It will show you how to join. Also, download the Geneva app. Once again, the Sapph-Lit Instagram is at Sapph-Lit. I'll have it in the description of this video, as well as the Sapph-Lit YouTube channel. That's where Nina, our book club founder, she posts all of like the author interviews that she does. You can watch them back on the Sapph-Lit YouTube channel. I'll post that in the description down below. And I'll also put Nina's TikTok in the description as well, because I just think she's a cool person to follow, and I think you'll enjoy her content if you find yourself intrigued by Sapph-Lit as a whole. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Sapph-Lit really helped to expose me to a wide range of sapphic literature that I previously hadn't been privy to, many of which I'm going to be discussing in today's video. Starting with Black Girl Call Home, a poetry collection by Jasmine Mans. Black Girl Call Home was the nonfiction pick for Sapph-Lit in February, and even though I wasn't able to read the book along with the rest of the book club because I joined late at that point, I was still really interested in reading the book for myself. And I've got to say that this book is by far one of the best poetry collections that I have ever read, and I've read a lot of poetry collections. Like, I'm just thinking about that now. I have so many poetry books on my bookcase. It's a lot, but I don't know, I just like poetry, man. It's really funny how before I started dating my boyfriend, I was like, ugh, poetry. Like, I did not care for poetry at all. And now since dating my boyfriend, I'm like, ooh, poetry, because he was really the person that like got me into poetry. Anyway, Black Girl Call Home is an incredible collection of poems about race, about blackness, about queerness, about womanhood, about Black womanhood, and it's just, oh, it's incredible. If you're familiar with my channel, then you probably already know that I am a huge fan of the poet Nayera Waheed, the author of Salt and Nejma. Jasmine's poems, while very much having their own distinct style, also feel quite reminiscent of Nayera Waheed's poems, particularly in like their messaging and like their themes, which makes a lot of sense because they are both Black women poets. But so if you like Nayera Waheed, I definitely think that you will enjoy Jasmine Mans. Her poems have the same succinctness that I absolutely adore about Nayera Waheed's work. I've gushed about this before when talking about poetry, but I absolutely love it when poets are able to convey really powerful messages in usually very few words. And after reading this poetry collection, it's very clear that Jasmine Mans is like a master of that. Again, I highly recommend this poetry collection. It contains such good messages pertaining to the intersectionality between Blackness and womanhood and queerness, and just has really good messages about like growing up and becoming an adult. Definitely add Black Girl Call Home to your TBR if you haven't already. Also, can we just make a little commotion for the cover? It is, it's so gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Next, if you've been following along with my recent book content, then you probably already know what book I'm going to talk about next, and that book is Last Night at the Telegraph Club, a YA historical fiction novel by Malinda Lo. At this point, I've already talked so much about this book, but just in case you aren't familiar with it, Last Night at the Telegraph Club follows the story of Lily Hu, a high school senior living in 1950 San Francisco, as she begins to come to terms with her sexuality. Secretly, Lily frequents the titular gay bar, the Telegraph Club, with her classmate turned love interest, Kath Miller, as deportation looms over her father's head. Honestly, I don't have much else to say about this book that I haven't already said. If you watched my Book Recs by Asian Authors video or my Last Night at the Telegraph Club video, then you already know that I love this book. This book will send you on a roller coaster of emotions in the best way possible. I literally cannot recommend it enough. It is my favorite book, like, possibly of all time, but definitely right now. Next, we have Nevada, a novel by Imogen Binney. I don't have a physical copy because I read it as an audiobook. In Nevada, we follow the story of Maria, a trans woman from New York who, following her breakup from her long-term girlfriend, buys a bunch of heroin, and she steals her ex's car, and she decides to embark on a road trip of self-discovery. On this road trip, Maria ends up meeting James, who is also trans but has not realized it yet, and the two agree to go to Reno together. Throughout the novel, Maria frequently monologues about gender, heteronormativity, and social conformity. Nevada was a super interesting read because I don't usually read novels where the protagonist monologues as much as Maria did, and I thought that that was going to be something that was going to bother me, but it actually never did. Maria's monologues always felt well paced, and they never felt out of place in context with the rest of the story, and they were all really interesting too. The one thing I will say about Nevada is that the ending, without giving it away, is definitely not what I expected it to be when I was reading the book. Personally, I don't think it was a bad ending. I thought that the ending was fine, but I could see how other people might not care for it, so do with that what you will. But I will say, definitely read all of Imogen Binnie's afterward, like after you've read the ending, because honestly it was the afterword that really sold me on the ending. So if you read through the ending and you're like, what? Huh? Read the afterword. It might provide you with some clarity on some questions you might have. Overall, I really enjoyed Nevada and I definitely recommend it. I actually picked up a physical copy and I brought it to the Sapph-Lit book swap event that I attended a few weeks ago. And one of my fellow Sapph-Litties ended up picking it up and taking it home. So that was pretty cool. I was like, oh, it's nice to kind of like pass the book along, because again, I enjoyed it, even if the ending kind of was a bit of a head scratcher, but I still think the book was good overall. I personally really enjoyed the audiobook experience because it was narrated by Imogen Binnie, but if you choose to go the not audiobook route with this book, I still think that you will enjoy it. Next up, we have Hijab Butch Blues, a memoir by Lamia H. In this memoir, Lamia beautifully draws connections between her queerness and her non-binary identity and her Islamic faith. Each chapter of the memoir details Lamia's experiences with growing up queer, while also always tying back those experiences to various religious figures within the Quran. Also, as a quick aside, I'd like to point out that I very much mispronounced the Quran when I first talked about Hijab Butch Blues in my trans authors video. I really should have taken more care to make sure that I had the correct pronunciation. That is very much on me. I'm very, very sorry about that. Anyway, Hijab Butch Blues was our April nonfiction pick for Sapph-Lit, and literally everyone in the book club was raving about it, myself included. I'm not a religious person. I was raised Catholic but no longer practice, and I don't usually seek out books that talk about religion in such detail because it's just not really my thing. But as an agnostic, I gotta say that I really enjoyed how religion was incorporated into this book. Like, it was really, really fascinating to me. Lamia really does such an excellent job of establishing the relationship between their queer identity and them being Muslim, because as Lamia themselves like addresses throughout the memoir, like being queer and being Muslim are often treated as mutually exclusive identities. But in reality, it is possible to be both queer and Muslim. This book is genuinely a contender to be like one of my favorite books of all time. It was so well written and it just really resonated with me. This book is both a celebration and also a reminder of the fact that there is not one like correct way to be queer, and no one can impose their own like feelings or like definition of like how to live your life and like how to be queer. Like, only you can define that for yourself. I cannot recommend this book enough. Also, I just gotta say that Lamia just seems like such a cool and genuine person. I was there in the Zoom when Nina interviewed her, and she was just so nice. And I was like, damn, you're a good writer, and you just seem like the coolest fucking person ever. Like, how do you do it all? You have got to read Hijab Butch Blues for yourself. You are severely missing out if you haven't already read this book. Lamia's storytelling is out of this world. You will laugh, you will cry. It's just such an excellent read. Next, we have Zammy, a biomythography by Audre Lorde. The title, Zammy, is a Karaku word for women who work together as friends and lovers. Biomythography is a genre created by Audre Lorde, and the genre combines biography, history, and myth. In Zammy, Audre Lorde chronicles her upbringing in Harlem to Black West Indian parents, and she also recounts the intimate relationship she had with various women throughout her life. Zammy explores themes of lesbianism, anti-Black racism, McCarthyism, as well as Lorde's complicated relationship with her mother, whom she loved but also often found herself at odds with. Zammy was our main nonfiction pick for Sapph-Lit, and I absolutely loved it. I've always known like who Audre Lorde was as like a writer and an activist, but I didn't really know like the details of her life, so it was really interesting to like read this book and actually get to like learn about like her childhood and her adolescent years and just like how she grew up. It was just all really, really interesting. And for so long, I didn't even know that Audre Lorde was queer. Like, I'm mostly familiar with like her work about race. Like, I didn't realize that like she was actually gay and that she wrote a lot about queerness. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, again, I'm learning so much. I like learning. Learning's fun, man. I also find it like really interesting to like read about the queer community in like 1940s, 1950s America, which is when Audre Lorde was like growing up. And because it's like something that I think is so fascinating is like how obviously they're all very like secretive about their identities because of the stigma, because of homophobia and whatnot, but also they're like oddly like open about like their identities and their queerness. It's very, the duality is really, really interesting to me. My favorite part of the book by far was the section where Audre Lorde talks about when she moved to Mexico for that period of time, which, you know, that was something I did not know. I didn't know that she had lived in Mexico at all for any period of time, so that was really cool to learn about. But what I really love about that section in particular is I feel that it really embodies like what I was just saying before, in that here you have these lesbian women, like a bunch of lesbian women in Mexico, you know, who aren't like obviously like super forthcoming with their like queerness, their queer identities, but they're also not like particularly secretive about it. And I guess something about that I just think is so interesting. Again, that just that duality. I don't know fully how to express it, but I just thought that was really, really interesting. Also, Audre Lorde's just an incredible, iconic writer. I definitely recommend. This is actually my first like physical book that I've ever had of Audre Lorde's. Definitely recommend it. Definitely recommend that you go pick it up. It was a really, really good read. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next, we have Rosewater, a novel by Liv Little. Rosewater follows the story of Elsie, a 28-year-old lesbian living in South London who has recently just been evicted from her housing. Having an estranged relationship with her family and nowhere else to turn, Elsie ends up calling up her childhood best friend Juliet, who at the start of the story she actually hasn't spoken to in a couple of months, and ends up crashing at her place until she can get back on her feet. As weeks turn into months and Elsie and Juliet spend more time together, Elsie slowly begins to realize that her feelings towards Juliet may be more than platonic. Rosewater was our May fiction pick for Sapph-Lit, and admittedly, I'm only a little over halfway through the book while I'm recording this video right now, but I've been enjoying this book so much that I still wanted to include it in today's video. Obviously, I can't really give my full thoughts on the book because I haven't finished it yet, but I really have been enjoying this book so far. Even though I wasn't able to read along with the rest of the book club back in May, I attended the Zoom interview that Nina did with Liv Little, and Liv just seemed like such a cool person that I was super inspired from that interview to finally pick up Rosewater and start reading it, and I was definitely not disappointed. I've really been loving Elsie as a main character, and I also really love the inclusion of poetry throughout the novel. Again, I don't have much else to say at the moment other than the fact that I like this book so far. I think it's fun. Also, can we just make a little commotion for the cover? It's gorgeous. I love the colors. It's just, oh, y'all know that I love cover design. It's like one of my favorite parts about having physical copies of books, and like, look at it. It's so beautiful. I love it. And finally, we have The Transgender Issue, a nonfiction book by Sean Fay. I read this book as an audiobook, which was also narrated by Sean Fay. In this book, Sean Fay details transgender liberation in the UK, in which she describes how social class, employment and housing insecurity, police brutality, and prisons and sex work all affect trans liberation. Sean Fay does a really excellent job outlining the intersectional issues that affect trans people, particularly in the UK, but also abroad too. Each chapter was super compelling, and each one outlined a different issue of the ones that I mentioned before, and I really learned a lot about how the trans right movement in the UK was like influenced by the trans right movement in the US, and like how they were similar and how they were different. It was all very, very interesting. I literally just finished listening to The Transgender Issue, like literally just the other day at work, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the whole book. The pacing was really excellent. All of it, like, it was all really, really good. I learned so much, and I definitely highly recommend that everyone, literally everyone, read this book, especially if you aren't trans. I'm sure that you will learn a lot just like I did. Anyway, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below in the comments what your current favorite queer books are. My TBR list is like a million fucking pages long, but I'm always looking for new books to read in spite of that, so feel free to leave your recommendations down below in the comments. Also, I just wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you for all the love on my Avoiding Terrible Queer Tropes in Writing video. It's been a really long time since I've seen that kind of success in one of my long form videos, like since my Minecraft Diaries theory video days. Like, it's been a really long time. It's been a couple of years, and I worked really hard on that video, so it just means a lot seeing all your love and support. So for everyone who liked and commented and has watched it, and it's just thank you so much. It really means the world to me. Once again, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I upload Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, except when I don't, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.